So we're back again with Chris and Stuart, and this time they're going to be talking to us about sponsorship. So Stuart and Chris, nice to see you both again.
Great to be back with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And well, we lent on Chris quite a bit on the last branding video. So Stuart, I think it's your turn in the chair.
Yes.
What is successful sponsorship? What does it look like?
So I think successful sponsorship, certainly in relation to Greenpower, is very much sort of subjective and relatable to each team's journey, really. So there could be some very established teams who are very familiar with sponsorship and who will be looking for the opportunity to renew sponsorships or bring new sponsors in and have multiple sponsors. Whereas there may be some new teams who are just beginning their journey, and for them, just getting that first bit of money to make sure that their kit car, they can buy their kit car or they can get racing on the track, that's a huge success for them. So I think it's very subjective depending on where you are on your journey. But so sponsorship from an external perspective can look very different, but obviously can mean something very special for each of those individual teams.
Yeah, I think the other important thing about a successful sponsorship is it should be very much a partnership. It's a two-way relationship, two-way partnership that that adds value to both partners. So they might be giving you some cash or something else that's of value to the team, but you need to think about what value you're bringing to the sponsor as well. So you need to offer them something.
And I guess that's really important because, as you've mentioned, it is kind of a business proposal in a way that you need to work together. And you're achieving the same goal. In reality, if you get a sponsor, they're going to be aligning with your goals and they're going to want you to succeed. So they are there to help you as well.
Absolutely. In fact, it's probably one of the biggest bits of advice I can give to anyone is making sure on any sponsorship journey, whether you're just starting out or even while you're with a sponsoring partner, is that you try and remove yourself from the scenario you're in and view it from an external perspective. View it from the partner's perspective. So you're always being kept on your toes and thinking, right, how can I please my partner? How can I look after the sponsors and sort of step away from it? Because sometimes in your own eyes, you can believe you have a fantastic asset and you believe in what you're doing. You've got a great brand, but you need to step back and think that there are partners out there who don't know anything about you. So you need to sell it into them and really make them believe and become part of that journey.
And I think you've already mentioned branding there. So let's bring that into it. As we've spoken quite a bit about branding already, how do you identify value for sponsors?
So yeah, as you correctly said, and as we mentioned in our last video on branding, I think this links in nicely. If you have a strong brand and it's a very sort of has a professional look, then I think that's going to help your case, because immediately a partner, without really understanding your story or your background, can see just from looking at you that you're matching up on your livery and you look professional, and that's going to help your case and that's going to help your story. So that's incredibly important, and that's why it links into all parts of the journey. I think also when you're identifying value for sponsors, you need to really look closely at the assets that you've got. So that's not just your physical or what we call tangible assets in your car and your team members, but it's also looking at the intangibles. So the story behind the team, the area you come from, the school you go to. Those are the stories you can really sell into the brand as well, and the partners. So that all comes together, and once you almost need to list your assets down and go beyond just the physical things that you can see, because there's lots that you can sell, and there's a lot that you can pitch in and promote to a partner.
Yeah, and as you were saying earlier, Stuart, I think the key thing there is list those assets, but then thinking about those assets in terms of, well, what does that mean for the potential partner, the potential sponsor, and translate it into where's the value for them in those assets.
And we've spoken about the story. How valuable is the story when you're talking to sponsors? How much do they put a value to it?
I think anything that can differentiate you is important. I mean, you have to consider potentially, if you're going to a bigger company and asking for sponsorship, these companies may be receiving hundreds of proposals just in a week. So you're not the only one going to them. You'll be one of many. You may not even be the only Greenpower team going to them. So therefore, you really need to look at the things that you have within your assets, which is going to differentiate you. So your story can certainly be one of those. And then thinking about how that story connects to the partner is really important and can help you stand out from the others.
And you've mentioned big corporate identities, and that you may be battling for sponsorship. How many times should you try a particular industry before, or a particular company, before you kind of give up? If you're not hearing anything, how many goes should you give it?
I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer to this one. Some people can say, you try a couple of times, you don't get a response, or maybe we leave that and we don't want to spend too much time there. Yet I hear stories of people who go knocking on the door and keep pushing and pushing because they believe that they're the right partner for them, and they eventually get a response. So I think you just have to weigh it up depending on your situation, and you probably don't want to go over the top and start spamming the brands and turning them against you. That's important. You want to keep them on side throughout it all.
Yeah, no, fully. You don't want to turn anyone away,
no,
or upset anyone.
But I think it's important to be persistent. I think the point is that don't take silence as a no. Just try again.
And at the end of the day, you're only asking a question. What harm can really come from asking?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So when you're talking to these big companies, how do you identify the opportunities for them? Do you spend a lot of time looking at their own website and what kind of things that they're already involved in?
100%. I think, sort of alluding back to our previous conversation around branding, sponsorship is something you need to treat with a lot of respect, and you put a lot of time, a lot of research into it. So as well as listing your own assets and understanding what you can offer, you should do lots of research on the brands you want to target. So look at their story, look at their values, and you can get most of this information off their website. Understand also whether they've gone into previous sponsorship. So that helps you identify, one, whether they understand sponsorship because they've done it before, and two, look at the areas which they're already sponsoring in. So that can help you sort of decide whether they would have an interest in what you're doing, or also if they've already sponsoring something in the area that you're part of. So do lots of research, do your due diligence, and essentially you're going and asking them for money. So you wouldn't go and buy a house by not looking at it. You'd go and have a look around it. You don't look at the area, look at everything. So you shouldn't go to a brand and expect them just to hand money to you. They want to see everything that you've got available. So that's how you should think about it and treat it like that.
And you've mentioned money as a form of sponsorship, but what other types of sponsorship are there?
I'll let Chris take that one on, I think.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, there's the cash-based sponsorship where they give you money, which at the end of the day is what's going to help the team run. But the other key form, I think, that's relevant for this conversation is really what's called value in kind, when the sponsor gives you something that you need to run as a team. So it might be that you need some materials, some whether that's plywood or whether that's fiberglass or whether that's some software or whether that's a laptop, or it could be some transport, for example. So they're providing value that you don't have to pay for, that helps you run the team and perhaps do more things than you would do otherwise, which means that you can spend the money that you have got on other things that you haven't got sponsors for. So those are, I think, the two main types that are relevant for this conversation.
And I actually got a good story of that with the Goblin event, or the Goblin category. It was a Renishaw Miskin event, and a Tesco delivery lorry turned up, and we were very unsure as to why it was here at a Greenpower event. They pulled back the curtain, and there was 4 or 5 Goblin cars all on the bed. Tesco had lent them the lorry to bring the car to the event, and that was a really valuable way of getting the car to the event because they didn't have another way of doing it.
Yeah, that's ideal, and it shows a bit of innovation. It's getting some visibility for Tesco and for all the people that were there, but it's, as you say, it's getting the cars to the event, which otherwise prove a bit of a headache.
I think I was just going to add to that as well about when you're targeting local opportunities, before you go out and research companies, use your own resources as well. There's, especially within a school or a group or community, there's parents, there's friends of parents, there's teachers, and a lot of these people have contacts either into companies or them themselves might be interested in helping you out. So utilize what you have already, because if you've got an advocate on your side who can support your case in a company, it skips an important step. You're already in there before you have to do any of the pitching or any of that. So utilize what you have around you, because you'll be surprised that there's a lot of connections once you start digging around amongst friends and family.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's
exactly.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
So you have the person on the inside tactic. What other ways could you approach an organization about sponsorship?
I think once you've done your research, I think the traditional method, as you like, is putting together a pitch document, which should consider. I think it's very easy in those documents to put together everything that's great about your team, and everything great about you and what you've achieved, perhaps the previous Greenpower events. But what we try and do is step back from that again and imagine you are reading it as the brand or the company receiving it, and what do you want to see? Well, actually, if I'm going to part with my money to support you, I want to see how this is going to be beneficial to me as well. So it's not just me saying, here's some money, enjoy. It's knowing what am I going to get back from that as a company or a brand. So that's really important to consider when you're putting your pitch document together. And then you can either send that across to them in an email. They may well not come back to you on that, so I'd always follow up with a call. Throughout it all, just being polite and trying to get them on side from the very beginning. And then from there, hopefully that can develop into meeting up with them and having a face-to-face. And that's when you get the great opportunity to really sell your passion, utilize again the assets you've got. So if you've got the kit car already, why not take that with you to a pitch? Let them see what they're part of, or bring them to your school or community group and show them what they can be part of as a company and brand. So really sell in the passion and assets that you've got. And one real selling point, we're speaking about how they get lots of sponsorship proposals every week. One real selling point about Greenpower is obviously the CSR angle, which is corporate social responsibility. That's a huge thing for companies, that some of them have CSR sort of teams within the company, and Greenpower is incredibly strong there, because you can go to them, and not only is it involving communities and schools, there's obviously the whole green energy link there as well, which is a huge differentiator, and is something that teams should really lean on, because that's really, really valuable to companies.
Yeah, that CSR angle is particularly important with industrial engineering companies. So the whole STEM education angle is obviously very important for them, because they want the next generation of engineers coming through.
Always. And I think also there always seems to be quite a lot of pressure. The bigger the industry, the more sponsorships or the more community funding you should be seen to do, because it is all about giving back to the community that you're in.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and that's a really unique and strong angle for Greenpower to have. So that should almost be at the forefront of any proposal document that you put together. That's a really important differentiator from everyone else out there. Yeah,
and you don't have to just be stuck to, I guess, paper-based proposals. You could send a video in with the team and really show your spirit around this competition.
100%. Yeah, anything that's going to make you stand out and be a bit different from the previous people or team that were looking for sponsorship from that company, the better. So yeah, think innovatively. We've seen and experienced quite a few different ideas and techniques, and some of them have worked, some haven't. But what you certainly shouldn't do is give up. If you don't get response from 1 to first 5, 10, 15, it could be, don't give up, because you'll eventually get through to 1, and that could become a long-term partnership. So keep at it, basically.
The other point there is don't always necessarily assume that the person you're approaching is the person that can say yes. So always also go into the conversation, or approach them with on the basis that they might not be the right person to say yes, but they might be able to point you in the right direction and refer you to somebody else. So yeah, engage in that conversation and let the ball roll.
And you bouncing off of that, so what type of departments are typically able to provide sponsorships when talking to a company?
I think that, I would always, depends on your proposal really, because it could be a sales-led partnership that you're looking at. So some going towards their sales team might be beneficial. I would probably always start by going to some companies have a head of sponsorship if they're a big company. So that will be the place you want to start. Anywhere, if they don't have that, someone within the marketing team, so a head of marketing. But I think it's a case of sometimes knocking on a few doors until you get through to the right person.
I think the other two areas could be, again, depending on the size of company, could either be the HR department, or, and again, depending on, sometimes it's standalone, would be the group that's responsible for the corporate social responsibility. So that's sometimes within HR, sometimes it's a standalone group. So there could be a number of areas where you might want to explore.
And we spoke quite a bit in the branding about how it was important that everyone has a feel of involvement in it. How important is it that people are involved in the sponsorship, especially the participants themselves, when it comes to writing those, oh, what's it called?
Proposals.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, again, really important. Firstly, I think it's great because it's sort of it leans on business acumen and introduce you to new skills. It introduces you to present and to put forward a convincing argument. So from that side, it's really valuable. Secondly, when sponsors and brands are buying into a team and putting money towards it, you are part of that team. So you are, again, as you are a representation of your brand, you'll become a representation of that sponsor. So therefore, that needs everyone to be reading off the same page and making sure that you represent your team in the right manner. Again, if you do anything which looks negatively or bad on that brand, then that will impact the rest of your team. So it's important that everyone buys into it and everyone sort of supports the cause for going out and finding sponsors as well.
And I think it's quite unique to Greenpower that your finishing position doesn't really have much of an impact in terms of your value to the sponsor either. It's not about your race results for Greenpower, it's about the learning opportunity, isn't it?
Absolutely. And sponsors will not sponsor you because you may have a chance of winning. That's important to state. So it doesn't matter if you're at the front of the field or the back of the field. Sponsors will get on board because they love the story, the journey, and they can really utilize that and benefit from that themselves. So don't think because you've got a slower car that you're not going to get sponsors. You've got exactly the same chance as a team at the front. It's all about the story and how you can make them feel part of that and make them really feel part of the whole journey.
So we've spoken a bit about putting a proposal together. What would be your starting place for putting a proposal to an organization?
I think probably the research element. So before anything goes on paper, it has to be the research. You need to know that company inside out. So you need to understand, like I said, their sponsorship background, their values. And then I would just pop it down. It could be a brainstorm session as a group, whether you've got a board, a bit like we said with the mood board with branding. You could do that and just put ideas on a board. So what's your assets? What are you pitching into them? How are there any connections to what you're doing to the company? It could be something small. If one of their values is about doing sort of better things for the environment, well, there's a nice link in. So immediately you link to that and look at where your strongest connections are and then build your document around that. There's plenty of advice out there, or we can certainly offer it on how to put a pitch document together and a sort of general ordering of where you'd place stuff. One of the key things to mention, I think, and Chris will probably agree, is not to bring money into it at the early stage. That's really important. Very often, as soon as you put, sponsors ultimately will want to know, okay, how much you're asking for. But if you give that to them too early, then they may already in their head be convinced that it's not right for them because it's too much money. If you sell them your story and you convince them on their story, then you tell them how much it is. They'll think, well, I do love the story, so okay, I'm willing to do that, as opposed to, no, that's too much, I don't want to hear your story. So you leave the money aspect out until really till the end. Once you've done your pitch, then you can talk financial terms. Yeah,
I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's get them involved in the conversation and get them engaging and passionate about what you're passionate about and the whole journey that you're going on. And even be flexible. Don't necessarily say, okay, we're either going to get £5,000 from them or we're going to go away. Just, okay, they might say, well, we can help you out, but we can't do that much, or whatever else it might be. Get them involved in the conversation and passionate, and see where the conversation leads to.
And we've started to talk about negotiations a little bit there as well in the sponsorship way. This is going to be a challenging question, but is it possible for people to know their worth when talking to an organisation?
I think as part of putting your assets together, you should have an idea of how much money you are looking to get. You know, you need to consider everything that's involved in a season of racing. So whether that's the build of the car, the transport to and from events, whether you have to stay overnight nearby, you should, as best as you can, list the approximate cost of all your values, of all your assets. So in your head, you do know how much you need really to go racing for that season. But I think, as Chris said, it's about being flexible as well. I would never go in to a pitch with a set package. So if you give us this, you will get this. You need to be flexible and reactive to what suits that brand. So they may not be interested in a certain element. I don't know, maybe they're not worried about the hospitality at events, but they do want some local media coverage. So you adjust your offering to suit what best suits their requirements. And again, there might be an element, like Chris said, that they may be able to offer half the cash and then the other half in value in kind. So providing you with a van to get to, or a minibus to get to and from events. So you need to go open-minded and don't think just because they say no to that's the end. Think about how you could negotiate and you could come back with a package more suited to them.
And really, to help with this, I guess laying out what those costs or what your costs are is really important for the sponsor to understand why you're asking for sponsorship.
Yeah, I think, as we said, once you're getting towards the latter stages of negotiation and talk about the financial terms, I think transparency is really important. I think, you know, as Chris said, you're building a partnership. It's not a brand, a team, here's some money, now go racing. It's a long-term partnership that you're trying to build here. So you need to be honest, truthful and transparent from the beginning. That doesn't necessarily have to be a line-by-line breakdown of exact where every cost comes from. But I think if they're going to be giving you money, they need to know roughly, okay, where are you going to spend this money? Is there going to be a bit on marketing? Is there going to be a bit on the transport, a bit on the car? So the more of an overview you can give them towards the end, the more they know that their money is being used towards what they would want it to be used towards.
We've started to touch upon it, but you want to keep them happy so that they renew with you. You want to make it a long-term partnership. I think that's always the goal of any sponsorship deal. How do you keep a sponsor happy?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? But there are I think a lot of people, because you put a lot of effort into getting sponsors in the first place, and it's an achievement to get sponsored. It's something you should be proud of because a lot of research and work goes into it. But people often think that's their job done then, when actually it's only just beginning. So you may have got the money, you may have got them across the line and they've got branding on the car, but then it's about how do you keep in communication and make sure that they're kept in the loop for a whole season. So that could be about inviting them along to events, providing them with speaking opportunities, perhaps at school or community events, offering your car for them to be used at events or to be used within their building, within the company. So it's about keeping them happy, keeping them involved. You can put newsletters or little marketing documents together after events and send them across to them so they can share internally. So it's all little things that continue throughout a whole season. And then hopefully at the end of it, it just rolls on to another year because they've enjoyed the experience and they've been able to tell their story through you. So that's the ultimate. That's what you should always aim for, is a long-term partnership. You shouldn't just view it as a short-term or 1 year or 6 month deal.
Yeah, and even if it is just something like £100, you know, like you said, it is a massive achievement because it can be challenging. And you've also mentioned about the sponsor coming in and doing an assembly, but actually I think some schools will find that really valuable as well, because giving young people an understanding of industry is very important at a young age, and having that collaboration between the two parties, I think it's just really strong for both people involved.
Hugely, yeah, and I think that strengthens the relationship. And like I said, it should be a two-way beneficial partnership for both parties. So obviously the team is benefiting from getting the money, but the partner is also utilizing the team to tell its story through the team. So again, that would be an asset. Coming to an assembly and speaking to others, that's a great asset for them to have as well, and it's a great thing for them to share internally and to utilize amongst their clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stuart mentioned it in his last comment. You know, the idea of if it's a major sponsor and putting a reasonable amount of money into the team, look at having the car in their reception area, so all their visitors going to the reception area can understand what the story is and understand how they're involved with the team. But also, you know, then going to assemblies, potentially you organising groups to go to their site and find out what they do. You know, they might be a big employer in the area, or they might, you know, there's all sorts of reasons why it could be beneficial for them to have a group from you go to them. It's all about that shared value.
And I think also, if you're quite a clever but cheeky person, you could use that company's reception area as storage over the winter break, for example, so it's not cluttering the school. But you know, the sponsor sees it as value, even though you're just trying to find a space for the car.
I can see how your mind works, Gav.
Yeah, how are you thinking?
Sorry, I'm giving away too much there. But that's the whole point, isn't it? It's all about being innovative and just finding out solutions to a problem, because if you're transparent, you can work through things together.
100%. Yeah. You may have given a few teams an idea now.
Well, fingers crossed. That's the whole point of these chats.
Exactly.
And I think one of the last things that we need to say, if you have built up a long-term partnership and it does fall through for a year or two, don't be disheartened, because they may come back and there's always more people out there.
Absolutely, and I think it's about not taking it to heart as well. There's often reasons that are well out of your hands as to why they're not continuing the partnership. So it's not necessarily a reflection of you or what you've done. So if that's the case, you just need to go back to the drawing board, discuss or do the things that we've just discussed, and go out and find a new partnership. And you never know, that partnership might work out even more successfully than the original one.
And have fun with it, because you get to be innovative, you get to problem solve. It's a really weird challenge that's in engineering, but it's not talked about a lot. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun, and you know, the holy grail is you get some money out of it, and you can have a new brand in place, and you get to be innovative with how you activate your partnership with them as well, which can be really fun. And it's about building relationships and meeting new people and building contacts. So yeah, it's a really fun part of it. It can be hard work, but at the end of it, you get to do what you want, and you build up great relationships.
And when you leave school, you have these people that you know where you can talk to about maybe an apprenticeship or even a job after university. So it does lead on to an actual career. It is very valuable.
Absolutely, and obviously Greenpower have got some great partners there already. So it's yeah, there's lots of opportunities beyond just getting a car on a track.
Well, brilliant. I think I've taken enough of your time. That's been really helpful going through different sponsorship terms. We haven't gone into detail on a lot of stuff, but in the community Greenpower group, Trevor Cook has put a lovely document on fundraising that he did with Chipping Sodbury School. If you want to know more and get a bit more of a feel for sponsorship, I really recommend you check that out. Stuart and Chris, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And well, I can't wait to get racing again. I'm excited to see what new sponsorships we see on the cars.
Absolutely.
Take care, both.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.